Hey, this is another video by PetRock, and today I'm working on my brother-in-law's '07 GT500, and today we're going to be replacing the driver's side wheel hub and bearing. This video is on a GT500. It's not specific to GT500s, so this will apply to pretty much the standard V6 all the way up to the regular GTs of this vintage. So that's how I have the car suspended in the air on the frame rail with a piece of wood so I don't damage the frame rail. And I also put the tire underneath the car just in case it does fall. It'll land on the tire and not straight on the ground, damaging other components. Okay, so to get the wheel hub, we got to remove the brake caliper and the rotor so that we can get access to this area right here. So to do that, I'll remove the entire caliper and mounting bracket as one unit. There's a bolt right there and another bolt right there that you remove. They're 15 millimeters. It's a little bit hard for me to record this from back here, so I'm going to bring you up front and just spin them off. Now we just take the caliper off. The caliper is quite heavy. You don't want to let the caliper hang off the brake hose. You could easily damage the flexible brake hose or bend or crimp the metal brake lines. Take a bungee cord or a bit of rope or something and hang it from the bungee cord. The key is you don't want the caliper's weight on the brake line. Okay, once you've got the caliper secured, there might be a little star-shaped thing on one of the lug nuts. You can just rip that off. You don't really need it. It's only there for assembly at the factory. In this case, there isn't one, so I can just pull the rotor right off. Maybe not. So in this case, the rotor doesn't want to come off. It looks like it's rusted to the hub. So just take a little penetrating oil, shoot it in the holes. Also put penetrating oil around this area right here, which is where the rust lives. So now that we let it sit for a little while, you want to take a flat sledge and another hammer and hit the back of the sledge like this in each spot around here. You don't want to just whack in here with the hammer because you could easily screw up the studs. And that'll wiggle it free so you can take it all the way off. If you notice all the rust in here and all the rust in here, that was holding the rotor in place. Okay, next we need to take this cap off. So it's just plastic, so you don't want to just beat on it. If you do damage it, don't worry, they are replaceable. I think they're like $10, something like that, but in my case I don't want to replace it, I want to reuse it. So I'm going to take a screwdriver between the hub and the cap and tap it in. And just keep working around the hub until it comes out. Alright, it's starting to come loose now. It helps if you have the screwdriver at a little bit of an angle. Once you got it out a little bit, you can start taking the screwdriver and just twisting it to pry the cap out. I need to get a bigger screwdriver. There we go. Okay, now once you've got the center cap off, now we need to remove this spindle nut. It's a 36 millimeter one-time use nut, so once you remove it, it's garbage. You need to replace it with a new one. If you don't have a 36 millimeter socket in your arsenal, you can rent one from your local auto parts store for a couple bucks and you get your money back when you return it. It's part number 27054. It's made by OEM. So these nuts are on with upwards of 220 foot-pounds of torque. So it's going to take a lot of effort to get this thing off. If you have the use of air tools, then I'd advise using that. Otherwise, you get a really long breaker bar and a bunch of leverage. Try to use your body weight to push it off. If you don't have a lot of body weight, you can try to find a friend with some, or you can reverse it and pull up on this side, you know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and lift with your legs. Again, there's a lot of torque on it, so you don't want to hurt yourself while you're trying to take this thing off. So now, if I'm lucky, this will just pull off, and it did. That's actually very surprising, knowing my luck. If you're unlucky and this doesn't want to come off easily, you can get a 3-jaw puller from your local auto parts store and basically push against this and pull this way with the puller in order to pull this off. So now we're going to prep for a reinstall. So first thing you want to do is you want to clean off the stud with some brake cleaner. Next, you want to put a light coat of anti-seize on the smooth part here, not on the threads, but on the smooth part here. This is to, in case you do live in an area with a lot of rust, this will make removing the hub next time, if you ever have to do that, a lot easier. You can use anti-seize here, or even a light coat of engine oil or transmission fluid will work here. Make sure to get this back flat part, because that's where the rust will most likely form. Now take out your old and your new hub assembly and verify that they're the same size, that the studs are in relatively the same locations, and that if your car comes with ABS, that it has an ABS tone ring on the back similar to your stock one, and just take it and slide it on. Okay, now we put on the new spindle nut. You don't want to put anything on the threads here because you actually don't want to make this easy to remove. Because this is what's applying the preload to the bearings inside the hub. Now you get a torque wrench that can do 221 foot-pounds of torque, and torque this thing down to 221 foot-pounds. Use your legs when you're pulling up. Don't just do this from your back, you'll hurt your back. Now that that's done, you take your cap, clean it off if you need to, and stick it back on. So as you can see, the cap doesn't want to go in straight always. It's a press fit, so you're going to need to take something and tap it through. So now before putting the rotor back on, it's a good idea to take a little bit of anti-seize and rub it around the hub right in here, like that. Maybe put a little bit in the flat spots to avoid having the rotor stick the next time you have to try to take it off. So it'd also be a good idea to take a little bit of emery cloth and clean up the inside bore right here, as well as smooth out this rusty area right in here so that it doesn't cause a problem later. And clean it off with a little bit of brake clean. Having any rust in here will make it so that the rotor doesn't sit flush against the hub, and you'll have it a little bit cockeyed. You don't want that. You want this to be as smooth as possible and as up against this hub as possible. So now reinstall the rotor. And to make installing the brake caliper easier, I like to take one of the lug nuts and just spin it on all the way. It's better when you have a through-hole lug nut to do this with. You might be able to pick one up at your local auto parts store so that the rotor stays flush against the hub and doesn't flop around as much while you're trying to put the caliper on. So before putting the caliper on and all that, you want to clean off the rotor to make sure you get off any penetrating oil or any of your own finger grease off the rotor before you continue. Make sure to get both sides. Okay, so now we put on the caliper. So remove it from its hanger and make sure that the brake pads are still separated and slide it into place. So now take the mounting bolts and put a little bit of anti-seize on the tip. You don't need to put a whole bunch, you just need a little bit. It'll coat itself over all the threads as you thread it inside. Some people put blue Loctite on. If you properly torque these bolts, you don't need Loctite. The reason I put anti-seize on these bolts is so that when I ever have to take these off again, there's not going to be rusted on and I'm not going to break the bolt off inside the mount. This just makes my life easier going down the road. I've been doing this for years and never had a problem. So just take the bolt, line up the holes in the mounting bracket with the holes on the spindle, and start them by hand. Again, sorry, it's hard to show this on camera, but you want to start them by hand so you don't cross thread them. Now take your 15mm socket and tighten them down. So next we torque down the mounting bolts to 85 foot-pounds. There's a bracket on the back side of the strut assembly that holds the brake hose in place. You might want to remove that bracket temporarily in order to give yourself a little bit more room to get your torque wrench in there. In my case I can fit it, so I'm just going to go for it. Sorry for blocking that shot and sorry for the dogs barking. Okay, once you've got this torqued down to 85 foot-pounds, that's pretty much it. You just obviously take the lug nuts off, put the wheel back on, drop the car down, and take it for a test drive. If you just change the hub, you don't need to get an alignment. If you had to touch the inner or outer tie rods or touch the strut, then you'd probably need an alignment. But if you just replace the hub, you don't need to get an alignment. You should be all good. But if you haven't gotten an alignment in a long time, it might be a good time to do it, just to make sure that everything's in line and running true again. So I hope this video helped you out. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comments section below. If you like this video, click the like button. If you want to see more videos like this one, subscribe.